life was perfect. I couldn't ask for anything more. I was truly blessed with an amazing, healthy child who was full of energy from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to bed.
Jordan was a wild spirit. You couldn't talk him into doing something if he didn't want to do it. He was pretty headstrong.
He had the most amazing smile and was a very, very happy child.
He liked doing things together. We called ourselves the Three Musketeers. We did a lot of things together.
So we had decided to take a trip to Costa Rica, and we stayed at 2 amazing resorts there.
So the last day that we were at that resort, Jordan was waiting for me. He goes, "Dad, Mom's got a massage and she's doing a pedicure and it's just you and me. What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know. What do you want to do?" He said, "I'd like to go tubing on the river." And I talked him out of it. I said, "It rained last night and the river's going to be cold." I said, "What if we go up to the hot spring that's got the water slide?" And he's like, "Okay." And I talked him out of going tubing to go in the pool. And he and I spent 6 hours going down that slide. He wore me out and he wore out several other people.
Jordan swam on Tuesday. We left the second resort on Thursday to head back into San Jose for our flight back to Orlando.
The headache started. On Thursday, it was a down day. He didn't want to do much. Friday, we got up in that morning and we headed back to the airport. We flew back into Orlando, and by the time we got the luggage and got through customs, his headache was pretty bad. He just wanted some takeout food when we got home. We gave him some Motrin, and we were a little concerned because it had been 3 days in a row and it had gotten worse each day.
By midday on Saturday, he was really having excruciating headaches, almost what I would describe as an adult might feel a really intense migraine headache. And he was just holding his head and saying that his head hurt really, really bad. And he complained that his neck felt stiff.
Got up Saturday morning, he seemed okay. He wanted to play his games. He wanted to get with one of his friends, have his friend over to play. And we're like, "Oh, you're tired. We just got back from the trip. Give it a break, and you got plenty of time for summer vacation." We didn't know that that would be the last day he'd play games. So
he was pretty much in bed that day. He just was not feeling well, and that was very unusual for Jordan.
By afternoon, he was just laying around. He didn't want to do much.
By Saturday night, he was still having really, really bad headaches, so I gave him some Tylenol just before bed.
We put him to bed, and he started vomiting probably an hour later. It started about 11:30.
The night was terrible. He kept vomiting on and off throughout the night. I took his blood pressure, took his temperature. He had just only a slightly elevated temperature. It wasn't a high temperature.
Shelly got me and she goes, I'm concerned. He doesn't feel good, he can't keep anything down. I said, all right, we'll take him to the emergency room if he's like that in the morning. So I spent the rest of the night with him. He was up every 20, 30 minutes.
The next morning he still wasn't feeling any better, so we definitely decided that we were taking him to the emergency room. And we did, and he was just so weak at that point. Ran some blood tests, and then I believe it was based on the blood test and the high white blood cell count, they decided to do a spinal tap. And when the doctor did it, he said, "Oh, the good news is the spinal fluid is clear." And so I felt relieved just hearing anything that, this was good news.
They did a CT scan after that, and they diagnosed him with viral meningitis. We asked, "Well, how serious is that?" And he said, "Well, you'll probably take him home in 3 to 5 days."
He seemed to kind of perk up a little bit, and he seemed to be feeling better, so that gave me maybe a false sense of hope that maybe he was doing better than he was. And I think, too, I felt like he was in the hospital, and, the doctors were going to be able to take care of him, and he was going to be fine. No parent ever fathoms. I don't think that they're going to lose their child. You think that the doctors, are amazing and they can save your child no matter what it is.
On Monday, which is 6 days after swimming, he got up and he seemed better. He still couldn't keep anything down. Said he still had a slight headache, and we weren't laughing and joking and talking about what we're going to do on the next vacation and what he wanted to do for summer vacation and where he wanted to go see his grandparents.
Monday, 4 or 5 o'clock, he was still having these horrific headache.
I said, how bad is it? He goes, oh, it's a 9, Dad. It's really bad and it hurts.
They gave him morphine.
It couldn't have been 10 seconds after they started the morphine drip. His eyes, his pupils dilated.
He started having hallucinations.
He wasn't making sense, and then over the next hour and a half, he didn't say as much. He wasn't seeing as much, and then the uncontrollable shaking, and he'd flail his legs around and his arms around. He couldn't control them.
We were afraid he was going to rip out his IV, and then he started to have a seizure.
By the end of the 4.5 hours, he didn't know where he was. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know who we were. It was just a blank stare. And they brought the ICU team in just as he had a seizure. He had aspirated into his lungs. They got some of that out. Thank God that they were there, because we probably couldn't have got that cleared in time. And they went ahead and put him on another stretcher, took him down the stairs, 2 floors to the ICU. And they tried to get him stabilized, and they gave him some sodium. It seemed to settle everything down. They did it rounds in the morning, and the doctors came in and they said, well, we've got him stable. That's good. Now it's going to be longer than we thought, but you'll probably take him home in 2 to 3 weeks.
But no worries, I was going to take Jordan home. So I just remember just wrapping my arms around him and thanking him, because I couldn't fathom what it was going to be like if anything happened to my son.
Later that night on Tuesday, it got worse, about 5 or 6 o'clock, and his vitals started dropping. His left lung ended up collapsing.
There was a point in which in the room, the doctor just looked around at the nursing team, and he said, I don't even know, anybody have any ideas? He says, I don't know what's going on here. And at that point, I was like, oh my God, the doctor doesn't even know what's going on. And he was asking for ideas, and one of the clinical staff said, recommended bringing in a neurologist to look at, the fluid in the brain.
And finally they said the cranial pressure was so high that they were worried it was going to push down on the brainstem, which will actually kill him. And they said, well, we could relieve the pressure, so we gave them the approval to bring a neurosurgeon in, and they drilled and put a little drain on top. And they actually collected the fluid that came out as they were reducing the pressure, and in that sample is when they found the amoeba. We Googled it, and the 3rd click we found out that it's 99% fatal.
So when they said that, I knew Jordan was gonna die. And so the doctor had told and suggested that Steve and I get some rest, because we'd been up for several days during all of this, and because he said we were going to have to make some difficult decisions.
A normal person is 15 on a scale of 1 to 15 for normal brain activity, and Jordan's a 3, which is just above brain dead.
And he came in and he said it was time that we were going to have to make a decision whether or not we were going to resuscitate Jordan. And so many of my family and some friends had gotten there by then, and so we all got around Jordan's bed. And I asked if there was one person in that room that thought we should resuscitate him to please speak up. And no one did. So we waited a few minutes longer, and Jordan passed away.
The drug was ordered from the CDC that they recommend for treating Naegleria, and it arrived at the Orlando airport 2 hours after Jordan passed. We let our guard down and didn't realize that swimming in hot springs was dangerous. He'd done it in 2011 and nothing happened. And it didn't even occur to us that it might be an issue.
The amoeba the water has to be forced up the nose, and apparently, you know, with going down the slides so many times, that's where he was infected.
So we swam on a Tuesday. He died Wednesday morning at 6:35 a.m., 7 days and 12 hours after swimming. And we had to take him to the hospital by Sunday, so by 4.5 days, I mean, you're in serious trouble and you don't even know it.
Well, I think there's a lot of, you know, what ifs. We found out that the resort knew about Naegleria, fowleri. So what if there'd just simply been a sign that said, you know, this water is fed from hot springs or danger? And then yes, once you get into the hospital, right? What if they would have heated Jordan's spinal fluid? What if they had looked deeper to see if the spinal fluid had an amoeba in it? They could have immediately properly diagnosed Jordan, and then they could have put him on the proper path for treatment.
You say, what if I'd known more about it? Or what if there'd been a sign there? We wouldn't have let him swim because we knew it was 99% fatal.
I want to make one comment for parents. One day out of our 10-day trip for 4 hours is how I lost my son.
It's very easy to consider it rare. A lot of people say it, the press likes to say it's very rare. So it can make yourself very complacent. You can say, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Well, Shelly and I are here to tell you it certainly can happen to you. And if it does, it's going to rock your world.